Imagine running a marathon every single day of your life, but instead of flat roads, you're sprinting up and down mountain peaks that reach 15,000 feet above sea level. The air is so thin you can barely breathe. Your lungs burn with every step. And one wrong move means plunging thousands of feet to your death, but you can't stop. Because the message you carry could determine whether an entire city lives or dies. Welcome to the Andes Mountains. 1450 AD. You are a Chasqui, an Inca road messenger. And your legs are the internet of the ancient world, the sound that wakes. You isn't an alarm clock. It's the haunting call of a conch shell echoing across the mountain valleys, its deep note carrying for miles through the thin Andean air. Your eyes open to a world painted in shades of gold and purple as the sun crests the jagged peaks surrounding your small stone shelter, built into a cliff face 13,800 feet above sea level. This is your tampu, your relay station, one of thousands. Of these essential communication posts that dot the most ambitious road system ever constructed by human hands. The Capac Ñan, the great road of the Inca Empire, stretches for over 25,000 miles across some of the most impossible terrain on Earth, connecting snow-covered peaks to steaming jungles, desert coasts to highland lakes, binding together an empire larger than the entire Roman domain at its peak. You swing your legs out of your simple bed, a raised stone platform covered with alpaca wool blankets, and immediately feel the bite of the mountain air against your skin. Even in summer, temperatures at this altitude drop near freezing at night. Your body has adapted over years of training, but the cold is still a daily enemy that must be conquered before you can begin your work. The morning routine is precise, developed through generations of Chasqui runners who understood that survival at extreme altitude requires discipline in everything. First, coca leaves. 3 perfect specimens selected from your carefully rationed pouch. You place them under your tongue, feeling the subtle alkaloid warmth spread through your mouth as your body begins to process the plant's natural compounds that will help your blood carry precious oxygen more efficiently. Next, chicha, the fermented corn beer that provides both calories and hydration, though at this altitude, even fermentation works differently, creating a beverage with unique properties that lowland dwellers couldn't imagine. The liquid is cool against your throat, and you can feel it begin to fuel the metabolic fire that will power today's impossible athletic performance. Your breakfast is simple but precisely calculated. Quinoa porridge mixed with dried llama meat, providing the perfect combination of complex carbohydrates and high-quality protein needed for sustained performance at altitude. A handful of toasted corn kernels adds additional energy, while dried potatoes, one of the hundreds of varieties, cultivated by Inca agricultural specialists, provide the mineral salts that prevent the muscle cramps that can be fatal when you're running along narrow cliff paths. As you eat, you can see other tampus across the valley, built into cliff faces, and mountain saddles, each one positioned exactly one day's run from its neighbors. Smoke rises from several of them. Other Chasqui beginning their morning preparations, part of a human communication network that operates with mechanical precision across thousands of miles of impossible geography. The view from your shelter encompasses some of the most spectacular landscape on Earth, but you've learned to see it with the calculating eye of a professional athlete rather than the wonder of a tourist. That snow-covered peak to the north. Its weather patterns will determine whether today's northern route is passable, the cloud formations building over the eastern jungle. They'll bring afternoon thunderstorms that could make the high passes deadly with lightning strikes and flash floods. The narrow path carved into the cliff face below your shelter isn't just a trail. It's a masterpiece of engineering that required decades to construct. With stone steps fitted so precisely that they've survived centuries of earthquakes, landslides, and weathering. But engineering can't change physics. At this altitude, every step requires twice the effort it would at sea level, and the margin for error is measured in inches rather than feet. You weren't born to be a Chasqui. You were chosen. The selection process that brought you to this stone shelter began when you were barely 10 years old. During the annual census that evaluated every child in your village for their potential contributions to the empire, imperial officials trained to recognize the physical and mental qualities required for different specialized roles, noted your unusual combination of lung capacity, leg strength, and most importantly, the psychological stability needed to function alone in extreme environments. The testing that followed was more rigorous than modern military special forces. Selection. Candidates were taken to high-altitude training facilities where they lived for months, while their bodies adapted to oxygen levels that would incapacitate lowland dwellers. Physical conditioning was just the beginning. Potential Chasqui also had to master the complex quipu system of knotted chord messages, memorize thousands of miles of route information, and develop the mental toughness needed to continue running. Even when their bodies screamed for rest, of the 200 boys who began training with you, fewer than 30 completed the full program. The others were reassigned to other roles within the imperial system, still honorable positions, but without the elite status and unique privileges accorded to certified Chasqui. The dropout rate wasn't due to cruelty or excessive demands, but simply because the job requirements pushed human physiology to its absolute limits. Your trainer, an old Chasqui named Tupac, whose legs had carried imperial messages for over 20 years, explained the philosophy that governed the selection process. The Empire is only as strong as its communication system. Information that arrives late is worthless. Information that arrives incorrectly is dangerous. We cannot afford messengers who are almost fast enough, almost reliable enough, almost tough enough, almost gets people killed. The physical conditioning involved running techniques that would seem familiar to modern athletes. Interval training at various altitudes, long-distance endurance runs, and specialized exercises to develop the specific muscle groups needed for sustained mountain running. But it also included skills that no modern athlete needs: how to read weather patterns from cloud formations, how to navigate by stars when mountain mists obscure familiar landmarks, how to survive for days on emergency rations when unexpected circumstances prevent reaching planned supply points. Mental conditioning was equally important. Potential Chasqui were subjected to stress tests designed to simulate the psychological pressure of carrying messages that could affect thousands of lives. They learned to compartmentalize fear, maintain focus despite physical exhaustion, and make critical decisions quickly, even when their brains were starved for oxygen. The final examination took place on a route that replicated actual Chasqui conditions. A 70-mile run across 3 mountain passes, carrying a practice quipu message that had to be delivered within a specific time window while maintaining perfect accuracy. Candidates who completed the run within time limits while correctly conveying every detail of their message were certified as full Chasqui and assigned to their first relay stations. The message system you've mastered is unlike anything that exists. In the modern world, quipu, literally talking knots in Quechua, represents one of history's most sophisticated information storage and transmission systems, capable of encoding everything from simple numerical data to complex narrative accounts, legal codes, and administrative records. The quipu you carry today consists of a main cord from which hangs dozens of subsidiary strings, each one a different color and thickness, with hundreds of precisely positioned knots that encode multiple layers of information. To an outsider, it would appear to be nothing more than a collection of colored strings, which is precisely why the system worked so effectively for maintaining imperial security. Reading a quipu requires understanding that isn't just intellectual but tactile and spatial. Your fingers can distinguish between different knot types by touch alone, essential for message verification when visibility is limited by mountain mists or darkness. The position of knots on each string, the relationship between different colored chords, the direction of twist in the main chord. Every element carries meaning that must be decoded with perfect accuracy. The message you're carrying today contains information about crop yields from highland agricultural terraces, population census data from several villages, a request for additional military supplies at a border fortress, and personal correspondence from a provincial governor to his family in Cusco. In modern terms, it's equivalent to carrying a flash drive containing spreadsheets, official reports, supply requisitions, and personal email, all encoded in a format that's simultaneously portable, secure, and remarkably durable. Creating accurate quipu required years of specialized training. Master quipu keepers, called quipu kamayuk, underwent education comparable to modern university programs, learning not just the technical aspects of knot-making, but also the administrative, legal, and historical knowledge needed to create meaningful records. They functioned as accountants, statisticians, historians, and communication specialists rolled into one. The security features built into the quipu system were remarkably sophisticated. Different regions used variations in color coding and knot, placement that made messages unreadable to unauthorized individuals. Critical information could be split across multiple quipu, making interception of a single message useless without the corresponding pieces. Most importantly, the system required human expertise to decode, even if enemies captured quipu examples. They couldn't access the information without also capturing trained readers. As you prepare for today's run, you carefully examine your message quipu, running your fingers along each string to verify the knot positions and ensure that the cords haven't been damaged during your rest period. A single misplaced knot could change numerical data, alter legal instructions, or compromise military intelligence. The responsibility of maintaining perfect accuracy while running at high speed across dangerous terrain is one of the psychological pressures that separates professional Chasqui from ordinary messengers. The Chasqui system represents the most sophisticated pre-modern communication network ever developed, operating with efficiency that wouldn't be matched until the invention of the telegraph. Your individual run is just one link in a chain that can carry messages across the entire empire, from the northern borders in present-day Colombia to the southern frontiers in Chile, in approximately 7 days, covering distances that would take other civilizations months to traverse. The network operates on relay principles that maximize both speed and reliability. Each Chasqui is responsible for a specific route segment, typically 15-25 miles depending on terrain difficulty and altitude challenges. This specialization allows every runner to develop intimate knowledge of their assigned route, every loose rock that could cause a fall, every weather pattern that affects trail conditions, every seasonal variation that changes optimal timing. Your route today covers the section between Tampu Capac, main station, and Tampu Huelabamba, Grass Plain Station, an 18-mile segment that includes 3 major mountain passes and elevation changes totaling over 4,000 feet. On flat terrain at sea level, this would be a challenging but manageable run for a trained athlete. At altitude, across terrain where every step must be precisely placed to avoid fatal falls, it becomes an athletic performance that pushes human capabilities to their absolute limits. The timing system operates with precision that would impress modern logistics specialists. Each route segment has established time standards based on seasonal conditions, weather patterns, and message priority levels. Routine administrative messages are carried at standard pace, allowing for rest stops and normal safety precautions. Urgent communications, military intelligence, natural disaster warnings, imperial emergency orders, trigger priority protocols that demand maximum speed regardless of personal risk. Communication between relay stations uses a combination of conch shell signals, smoke signals, and mirror flashes that can carry basic information across valleys and peaks much faster than human runners. When you begin your run, the receiving station already knows you're coming, approximately when to expect you, and what priority level your message carries. This advance warning allows them to prepare their own runner for immediate departure, minimizing transfer time and maintaining network efficiency. The system includes built-in redundancy measures that ensure critical messages reach their destinations even if individual links fail. Important communications are often sent via multiple routes simultaneously. Emergency protocols allow for bypass procedures when route segments become impassable due to landslides, storms, or other obstacles. Backup tampus provide alternative stopping points when primary stations are compromised. Quality control operates through regular inspections and performance monitoring that would be familiar to modern management systems. Senior Chasqui supervisors travel the network regularly, timing runs, evaluating message accuracy, and assessing the condition of routes and facilities. Runners who consistently meet performance standards receive additional privileges and recognition. Those who fail to maintain required standards face reassignment or more serious consequences. The pre-run preparation ritual you perform has been refined over generations of Chasqui experience, each element designed to maximize performance while minimizing risk in an environment where small mistakes can have fatal consequences. The routine begins with a thorough equipment check that would be familiar to any modern extreme sports athlete, but adapted for technology and materials available in the 15th century. Your running outfit is the product of centuries of textile innovation. The base layer is vicuña wool, woven so finely that it provides insulation without bulk, wicks moisture away from your skin, and maintains its properties even when wet. Over this, you wear a tunic of alpaca wool dyed with imperial colors that identify your status as an official Chasqui to anyone who encounters you on the trails. The outer layer is a waterproof cape made from llama hide, treated with natural oils that shed rain while remaining flexible enough not to restrict movement. Your footwear represents some of the most advanced athletic shoe technology of its era. The Usuta, leather sandals with thick soles, are custom fitted to your feet and designed specifically for mountain trail running. The soles are made from llama hide that's been hardened through a process involving plant tannins and mineral salts, creating a surface that provides traction on wet rock while remaining flexible enough to feel trail contours through the sole. Fiber cords wrap around your ankles and calves, providing support without restricting blood circulation during long runs. The equipment you carry has been selected and tested for reliability under extreme conditions. Your Chasqui bag, especially. Designed pouch that distributes weight evenly and prevents items from shifting during movement. Contains your message quipu, wrapped in waterproof alpaca wool. Emergency food rations consisting of dried meat and roasted corn. Coca leaves for altitude management, and a small knife for cutting through obstacles or emergency situations. Navigation equipment includes a collection of carefully selected stones that serve as waypoint markers, each one unique to your route and easily recognizable even in poor visibility conditions. A small mirror made from polished obsidian allows for emergency signaling, while a whistle carved from bird bone provides audio communication capability that carries effectively across mountain valleys. The physical preparation routine begins with altitude acclimatization exercises that help your body adjust to the oxygen levels you'll encounter during the run. Deep breathing techniques, passed down through generations of high-altitude athletes, help maximize oxygen uptake and prepare your cardiovascular system for sustained effort at elevation levels that would incapacitate most lowlanders. Dynamic. Stretching focuses on the specific muscle groups that will bear the greatest stress during mountain trail running. Calves that must provide power for continuous uphill movement. Quadriceps that control descent on steep downhill sections, and core muscles that maintain balance on narrow trail segments. The routine also includes exercises for smaller stabilizing muscles that prevent ankle injuries on uneven terrain. Mental. Preparation involves visualization techniques that help prepare your mind for the psychological challenges of high-altitude solo running. You mentally rehearse your route, imagining each major landmark, elevation change, and potential hazard. This mental mapping serves both practical and psychological purposes. It helps ensure you don't miss navigation markers in poor visibility, and it provides familiar mental anchors that help maintain psychological stability during the physical stress of sustained high-altitude effort. The moment of departure is marked by a ritual that connects you to generations of Chasqui who have stood at this same spot, preparing to carry the Empire's messages across impossible terrain. You face east toward the rising sun and recite the runner's oath in Quechua, words that acknowledge both the honor of serving the Empire and the very real possibility that today's run might be your last. Inti taitai, kai punchaipi nu kai kupuriku. Father Sun, this day we run in your light, carrying the words of the Sapa Inca across the sacred mountains. Give strength to our legs, clarity to our minds, and safe passage through the realm of the condors. The ritual serves practical as well as spiritual purposes. The formal beginning helps transition your mind from rest mode to the focused mental state required for sustained high-performance athletics. The spoken words confirm your understanding of today's mission and your commitment to completing it regardless of obstacles. Most importantly, the ceremony provides a moment of calm before beginning an activity that will demand every bit of your physical and mental capacity. As you begin to move, the first steps are deliberately slow and controlled, allowing your body to begin its adaptation to movement while giving your mind time to assess current conditions. The stone path beneath your feet feels familiar, but slightly different from yesterday. Overnight temperature changes have altered the surface texture, and morning moisture has changed the traction characteristics you'll need to account for during faster sections of the run. The initial segment of your route descends from the Tampu through a series of switchbacks carved into the cliff face, losing 800 feet of elevation over the first mile while traversing terrain so steep that railings would be considered essential by modern safety standards. The Inca engineers who designed these paths understood that gradual grades would require impossibly long routes through mountain terrain, so they created what are essentially athletic challenges disguised as transportation infrastructure. Your pace during this descent is controlled by the need to maintain safety rather than by cardiovascular limitations. Each footstep must be precisely placed on stone surfaces that can be slippery when wet, loose when dry, or hidden by morning mist that often lingers in the valleys until mid-morning. The mental focus required is intense. A moment of inattention could result in a fall that would end not just today's mission, but your entire career as a Chasqui. The early morning air carries sounds that provide important information about conditions ahead. The call of specific bird species indicates weather patterns and helps predict visibility conditions in higher elevations. The sound of water flowing in normally dry creek beds warns of overnight rainfall that could have created hazardous conditions on trail sections you can't yet see. The absence of normal wildlife sounds can indicate dangerous conditions, predators, unstable terrain, or other hazards that even animals avoid. As the initial descent levels out into the first major valley crossing, you begin to increase your pace to the sustained rhythm that will carry you across the entire route. This is where your years of training become most apparent, the ability to find and maintain an effort level that can be sustained for hours, while navigating terrain that demands constant attention and adjustment. Finding the optimal running rhythm at extreme altitude requires techniques that no modern athlete has needed to master. The fundamental challenge isn't just the reduced oxygen availability, it's learning to maintain sustained athletic performance. While your brain functions in a state of mild oxygen deprivation that affects everything from reaction time to decision-making ability, your breathing pattern has been developed through years of specific training, designed to maximize oxygen uptake in air that contains roughly half the oxygen available at sea level. The rhythm is deeper and more controlled than normal running, breathing with longer exhalation phases that help remove carbon dioxide more efficiently. This isn't something you think about consciously during the run. It's become as automatic as your heartbeat, allowing your conscious mind to focus on navigation and safety, while your respiratory system operates with learned efficiency, the running. Gait you use has been adapted for mountain trail conditions that would challenge even experienced modern trail runners. Shorter strides reduce the impact forces that could cause injury on hard stone surfaces, while providing better control on steep terrain. Higher step frequency maintains forward momentum without requiring the longer strides that would be dangerous on narrow trail sections. Your feet land closer to flat-footed rather than heel-striking, distributing impact forces more evenly and providing better traction on uneven surfaces. Energy management requires constant calculation and adjustment based on terrain, weather, and distance remaining. The route ahead includes sections that will demand maximum effort, steep climbs where you'll need to maintain pace despite screaming leg muscles and burning lungs, technical descents where you'll need sharp mental focus despite physical fatigue. Pushing too hard early in the run leaves you vulnerable to performance collapse in critical later sections. Running too conservatively might mean failing to meet time requirements that could have serious consequences for the people depending on your message. The landscape flowing past provides constant feedback about your performance and condition. Familiar landmarks serve as timing checkpoints. That distinctive rock formation should be reached within 90 minutes of departure, the stream crossing, should happen before the sun reaches a particular angle. The steep switchback section should be completed while you still have energy reserves for the major climb ahead. Wildlife encounters are part of the daily routine, requiring responses that balance caution with the need to maintain schedule. Vicuñas and llamas generally ignore passing humans, but their behavior can indicate the presence of predators or unusual conditions ahead. Condors circling overhead are normal, but changes in their flight patterns might indicate approaching weather systems. The absence of normally present animals can signal dangers that aren't immediately obvious to human senses. The psychological state required for sustained high-altitude running involves a kind of meditative focus that allows awareness of multiple information streams simultaneously. Part of your attention monitors physical condition, heart rate, breathing, efficiency, muscle fatigue levels, hydration status. Another part tracks environmental conditions, trail surface, weather changes, visibility, navigation landmarks. A third part maintains awareness of schedule requirements and route planning. For sections ahead, this multi-layered awareness develops over years of training and can't be taught directly. It emerges from accumulated experience of running hundreds of similar routes under varying conditions. It's similar to the situational awareness that modern fighter pilots developed but adapted for solo athletics in an environment where emergency backup isn't available and mistakes have immediate, serious consequences. The transition from high alpine terrain into cloud forest represents one of the most challenging sections of your route, requiring rapid adaptation to completely different environmental conditions while maintaining the pace necessary to meet delivery schedules. Within the span of an hour, you'll descend from barren stone peaks into a world of dense vegetation, constant moisture, and visibility so limited that navigation becomes as much about sound and feel as sight. The cloud forest exists in a narrow elevation band where warm, moist air from the Amazon basin meets cold mountain air, creating persistent fog conditions that can reduce visibility to less than 20 feet. The trail through this section was carved by Inca engineers who understood that the shortest route between mountain peaks often requires passage through zones where normal navigation techniques become useless. Your running style changes dramatically. As you enter the mist, the controlled, distance-eating rhythm appropriate for open mountain running gives way to a more cautious, reactive approach that prioritizes safety over speed. The stone trail surface becomes slippery with constant moisture, requiring shorter steps and more precise foot placement. Roots, moss, and wet leaves create additional traction challenges that didn't exist in the barren alpine zones. Sound becomes your primary navigation tool in conditions where you can't see more than a few trail markers ahead. The echo of your footsteps off nearby rocks helps indicate when you're approaching cliff edges or steep drop-offs. The sound of water flowing tells you when you're nearing stream crossings that serve as important route waypoints. Bird calls and insect sounds provide information about local conditions and help confirm that you're following the correct trail, rather than one of the many animal paths that intersect the human route. The vegetation in the cloud forest represents ecosystems found nowhere else on Earth, adapted to the unique conditions created by persistent fog and extreme elevation. Orchids and bromeliads grow directly on tree branches, creating hanging gardens that would be spectacular if you had time to appreciate their beauty. Moss covers everything in a thick, spongy layer that changes the acoustic properties of the environment and affects how sound travels through the forest. Wildlife. Encounters in the cloud forest are different from those in open mountain terrain. Spectacled bears, though rarely seen, leave signs that experienced Chasqui learn to recognize. Claw marks on trees, disturbed vegetation, distinctive scat that indicates recent presence. While attacks on humans are extremely rare, the knowledge that you're sharing the trail with large predators adds psychological pressure to an already challenging navigation situation. The psychological challenge of running through persistent fog, unable to see familiar landmarks or assess route conditions ahead, tests mental skills that are as important as physical conditioning. The tendency to become disoriented or anxious in low visibility conditions can lead to navigation errors, pacing mistakes, or loss of confidence that compromises performance in later route sections. Breathing in the cloud forest requires adaptation to air that's saturated with moisture and occasionally laden with pollen or other organic particles. The higher humidity affects how efficiently your respiratory system operates, while the dense vegetation can trigger allergic responses in some individuals. Techniques learned during training help manage these challenges, but they still represent additional stress on systems that are already operating at their physiological limits. The transition out of the cloud forest into open terrain above provides psychological relief that can be almost overwhelming. The sudden return of long-distance visibility, the ability to see familiar landmarks, and the return to normal traction conditions often trigger a temporary surge in energy and confidence. However, this psychological boost must be managed carefully to avoid overexertion that could compromise performance in the challenging terrain still ahead. Your route carries you past several huacas, sacred sites that hold deep spiritual significance in Inca cosmology and serve important practical functions for travelers crossing dangerous terrain. These locations, marked by carefully arranged stone cairns, offering platforms and sometimes small shelters, represent the intersection of religious belief, practical navigation, and psychological support for people undertaking dangerous journeys. The first major huaca on today's route is positioned at the highest point of your path, where the trail crosses a windswept pass at 16,200 feet above sea level. Here, generations of travelers have left offerings of coca leaves, small stones, and personal items to ensure safe passage through the dangerous mountain terrain ahead. The practice serves both spiritual and practical purposes. The act of stopping to make an offering provides a mandatory rest break at the most physically demanding point of the climb, while the ritual helps manage the anxiety that naturally accompanies exposure to extreme altitude and dangerous terrain. As you approach the pass, you can see the huaca from a distance, a large cairn of stones accumulated over centuries of use, with colorful textile offerings fluttering in the constant wind. The site provides psychological comfort that's difficult to overstate when you're operating at the edge of your physical and mental capabilities. The knowledge that thousands of other travelers have passed this same point, faced the same challenges, and successfully continued their journeys helps maintain the mental toughness necessary for sustained high-altitude performance. The offering ritual you perform is brief but meaningful. 3 perfect coca leaves are placed on the cairn, while you recite a short prayer asking the mountain spirits for continued safe passage. A small stone from your personal collection is added to the cairn, symbolically contributing to the sacred site while lightening your load by a tiny amount. The ritual takes less than 2 minutes, but it provides a psychological transition point that helps prepare your mind for the technical descent ahead. The view from this pass encompasses terrain that stretches for hundreds of miles in every direction. Snow-covered peaks, deep valleys, and the distinctive agricultural terraces that mark human settlement in this seemingly impossible landscape. On clear days, you can see other sections of the Capacñan carved into distant mountainsides, reminding you that your individual run is part of a transportation network that connects every corner of the empire. Sacred sites along the route also serve practical navigation functions that are especially important in poor weather conditions. Each huaca is positioned at a critical decision point where trails branch or where route finding becomes challenging. The cairns are large enough to be visible even in fog or snow, while the offering areas provide level space where travelers can stop safely to assess conditions and plan their approach to difficult terrain ahead. Some huacas include small shelters or cave systems that provide emergency refuge during severe weather. These locations are maintained by local communities who consider their upkeep a religious obligation, ensuring that travelers caught by unexpected storms have access to protection that could mean the difference between survival and death. As a Chasqui, you're trained to recognize signs that indicate when these emergency shelters should be used rather than continuing your run in dangerous conditions. The psychological impact of passing these sacred sites during a grueling run can't be understated. The knowledge that you're following paths used by countless previous generations, that your effort is part of a tradition stretching back centuries, provides motivation that helps push through the physical discomfort and mental fatigue that are inevitable during sustained high-altitude athletics. The spiritual connection to the landscape and the cultural continuity represented by the huacas help transform what could be seen as merely athletic suffering into something with deeper meaning and purpose. The descent from the high pass represents the most technically challenging and dangerous section of your entire route, requiring skills that combine rock climbing, trail running, and mountain navigation into a discipline that has no modern equivalent. Over the next 3 miles, you'll lose 2,800 feet of elevation while traversing terrain so steep and exposed that construction of the original trail required engineering techniques that modern experts still don't fully understand. The trail itself is carved directly into the cliff face, creating a stone stairway that descends at angles that would be considered extreme even by modern hiking standards. Each step has been individually shaped and positioned to provide stable footing while maintaining a gradient that allows for controlled descent. The precision of the construction is remarkable. After centuries of use by countless travelers, the steps remain solid and properly positioned despite earthquakes, weathering, and the constant freeze-thaw cycles that destroy most stone construction at this altitude. Your descent technique requires a completely different skill set from the climbing and level running that preceded it. The pace must be fast enough to maintain momentum and prevent muscle fatigue from excessive braking, but controlled enough to ensure that each footstep lands precisely on the intended surface. The psychological challenge is significant. You're essentially running down what amounts to a stone staircase built on the face of a cliff, where a misstep could result in a fall of several thousand feet. The mental focus required is extraordinary. Each step must be planned while you're still executing the previous one, requiring a kind of predictive processing that allows you to maintain running rhythm while constantly adjusting for variations in step height, surface conditions, and traction characteristics. Your eyes must simultaneously track the immediate trail surface, scan ahead for obstacles or changes in route direction, and monitor the broader environment for weather changes or other hazards. Weather. Conditions during the descent are particularly treacherous. The rapid elevation change creates its own microclimate effects, with temperature variations that can cause condensation on rock surfaces, making traction unpredictable. Wind patterns are channeled and intensified by the cliff face, creating gusts that can throw you off balance at critical moments. Afternoon thunderstorms, common during certain seasons, can turn the descent into a deadly combination of slippery surfaces and lightning exposure. The physical demands of controlled high-speed descent are different from but equally challenging as uphill climbing. Your quadriceps muscles must work continuously to control your descent rate, generating heat that must be managed to prevent cramps or muscle failure. Your ankles and feet endure repeated high-impact forces that can cause injury if your technique isn't perfect or if fatigue compromises your form. Navigation during the descent requires constant attention to trail markers that can be easy to miss when you're focused on foot placement and maintaining balance. Critical route decisions must be made quickly and correctly. Wrong turns on cliff faces don't offer opportunities to backtrack and try again. The trail markers used in these sections are often subtle, designed to be obvious to trained users while remaining invisible to casual observers who might attempt dangerous routes without proper preparation. The psychological pressure of sustained technical descent can be overwhelming even for experienced athletes. The combination of physical stress, environmental exposure, and constant danger creates a mental state that must be carefully managed to prevent panic or loss of confidence that could lead to fatal mistakes. Techniques learned during training help maintain the focused calm necessary for safe completion, but the mental demands remain intense throughout the entire descent. Every Chasqui carries knowledge of emergency procedures developed through centuries of experience with the dangers inherent in high-altitude mountain travel. These protocols represent accumulated wisdom about survival in conditions where outside help isn't available and where small problems can quickly escalate into life-threatening situations. Weather emergency procedures are among the most critical skills in your repertoire. The Andes are notorious for sudden, severe weather changes that can transform relatively safe travel conditions into deadly situations within minutes. Lightning storms at high altitude are particularly dangerous, because the exposed ridges and passes that define Chasqui routes offer no protection from electrical strikes. When approaching storms are detected through cloud formations, wind patterns, or atmospheric pressure changes you've learned to recognize. Established protocols require immediate shelter-seeking behavior regardless of schedule pressures. The emergency shelter network consists of cave systems, rock overhangs, and constructed refuges positioned at strategic intervals along major routes. These locations are maintained by local communities as part of their service obligations to the Empire, ensuring that travelers have access to protection when conditions become dangerous. Each shelter is stocked with basic emergency supplies, dried food, coca leaves, fire-making materials, and simple medical supplies for treating common trail injuries. Injury protocols assume that you'll need to manage medical emergencies without outside assistance, potentially for days if severe weather prevents rescue or evacuation. Your training includes treatment techniques for altitude sickness, hypothermia, fractures, cuts, and the various injuries that can result from falls or overexertion. The medical supplies you carry are limited by weight constraints, but they include items that can address the most common serious problems. Coca leaves for altitude management, plant-based medicines for pain relief and infection prevention, and materials for wound treatment and temporary splinting. Navigation, emergencies, becoming lost or disoriented due to weather, fatigue,
or route changes require protocols that balance the need to reach your destination with the importance of staying alive long enough to complete your mission. The basic principle is to avoid panic and make systematic attempts to re-establish
your position using available landmarks, celestial navigation, and familiarity with local geography. If position can't be determined, the protocol is to return to the last known location and wait for conditions to improve, rather than continuing blindly and potentially becoming more lost. Communication emergency procedures involve the use of mirrors, smoke signals, and conch shells to alert other parts of the Chasqui network or local communities to your situation. These techniques can be effective over surprising distances in mountain terrain, where line-of-sight visibility might extend for many miles, and where acoustic properties allow sounds to carry across valleys and peaks. However, their effectiveness depends on favorable conditions and the presence of others who can observe and respond to your signals. The decision-making framework for emergency situations emphasizes mission completion when possible, while recognizing that a dead messenger serves no one. The general principle is that routine messages can be delayed for safety reasons, but critical communications, military intelligence, natural disaster warnings, emergency administrative orders, justify accepting higher levels of personal risk. However, even critical messages don't justify suicidal behavior, since mission failure through death is still mission failure. Equipment emergency procedures cover situations where essential gear is lost, damaged, or proves inadequate for conditions encountered. Backup plans include improvisation techniques using natural materials, redundant systems for critical items, and alternative approaches that can substitute for missing equipment. For example, navigation can continue using celestial positions and terrain features even if physical markers are obscured, and emergency food can be obtained from known plant and animal sources along established routes. Understanding and predicting mountain weather represents one of the most critical survival skills for anyone operating in high-altitude Andean terrain, where meteorological conditions can change from pleasant to lethal within the span of minutes. Your training as a Chasqui included intensive education in weather pattern recognition that would be impressive by modern meteorological standards, based on centuries of accumulated knowledge from people whose lives depended on accurate weather assessment. The morning weather briefing you give yourself is based on observation techniques passed down through generations of mountain travelers. Cloud formations provide the most reliable indicators of conditions developing over the next several hours. Lenticular clouds forming around high peaks indicate strong winds at altitude that could create dangerous conditions on exposed ridges. Cumulus clouds building early in the morning suggest afternoon thunderstorm development that could make high passes dangerous due to lightning risk. Temperature patterns in mountain terrain follow rules that seem counterintuitive to lowland dwellers. but become predictable with experience. Valleys often trap cold air overnight, creating temperature inversions where higher elevations are actually warmer than lower ones during early morning hours. This affects not just comfort, but also trail conditions. Ice may persist in shaded valley sections, while sunny slopes at higher elevations provide good traction. Wind patterns in the Andes are influenced by complex interactions between global weather systems and local topographical features that create microclimates unique to specific valleys, passes, and ridge systems. The afternoon winds that develop. As valley air heats and rises can reach velocities that make travel on exposed sections dangerous, especially for someone whose balance is already compromised by fatigue from sustained running. Precipitation in mountain environments comes in forms that lowland travelers rarely encounter. Graupel, small, soft hailstones that fall frequently at high altitude, can accumulate quickly on trail surfaces, creating conditions that are simultaneously slippery and obscuring. Freezing rain creates ice layers on rock surfaces that make normal footing techniques useless. Snow squalls can reduce visibility to zero within minutes, making navigation impossible. Even on familiar routes, the timing of weather changes follows patterns that experienced mountain travelers learn to recognize and predict. Morning conditions are usually the most stable and predictable, making early starts advisable for dangerous route sections. Afternoon thunderstorms are common during certain seasons, typically developing between noon and 4 p.m. and clearing by evening. Evening and overnight weather is often calmer than daytime conditions, but temperatures drop rapidly after sunset. Barometric pressure changes, while not measurable with instruments available to Chasqui runners, can be detected through physical symptoms that trained individuals learn to recognize. The headaches, fatigue, and breathing changes that accompany dropping pressure often provide several hours of advance warning before visible weather changes become apparent. This early warning system can be the difference between reaching shelter safely and being caught. In dangerous conditions, the relationship between weather and trail conditions is complex and variable depending on elevation. Sun exposure and local geological factors. Rain at one elevation might fall as snow just a few hundred feet higher, creating dramatically different traction and visibility conditions within a single route section. South-facing slopes dry quickly after precipitation, while north-facing sections might remain dangerous for hours or days longer. The Andean ecosystem through which your route passes supports wildlife populations adapted to extreme altitude conditions, creating potential encounters that require knowledge, caution, and appropriate responses to maintain both human safety and respect for the animals that share this challenging environment. Your training included extensive education about animal behavior, seasonal patterns, and appropriate response techniques for various encounter scenarios. Spectacled bears represent the most potentially dangerous large mammal you might encounter. Though actual attacks on humans are extremely rare, these bears, the only species native to South America, are primarily vegetarian but are large and powerful enough to pose a serious threat if surprised, threatened, or protecting cubs. Bear sign along the trail, claw marks on trees, disturbed vegetation, scat deposits, provides advance warning of their presence and helps you adjust your behavior accordingly. The appropriate response to bear encounters involves avoiding surprise meetings through noise-making when visibility is limited, maintaining distance when bears are observed, and never approaching or attempting to feed them. If a close encounter occurs, the recommended behavior is to appear large by raising arms or clothing, speak in calm, low tones, and back away slowly. While avoiding direct eye contact, running from bears is generally inadvisable because it can trigger chase responses, and bears are capable of much higher speeds than humans even in ideal conditions. Puma populations in the high Andes are sparse but present, and these large cats are much more dangerous to humans than bears due to their predatory nature and hunting behavior. Pumas are primarily nocturnal and extremely stealthy, making encounters rare during daylight hours when most Chasqui travel occurs. However, awareness of their presence is important for route planning and safety protocols, especially when overnight stays become necessary due to weather or other emergencies. Vicuñas and their domesticated relatives, llamas and alpacas, are commonly encountered and generally pose no threat to humans. However, Male animals during breeding season can become aggressive and territorial, requiring caution when passing through areas where they're present. These animals also serve as early warning systems for other dangers. Their alert behavior and alarm calls can indicate the presence of predators or other disturbances that might affect human travelers. Bird life in the high Andes includes species that provide important information about environmental conditions and potential hazards. Condors, with their massive wingspans and soaring abilities, serve as living weather stations. Their flight patterns indicate wind conditions and thermal activity that affect local weather development. Their presence or absence from normal roosting areas can signal approaching storms or other environmental changes that experienced travelers learn to interpret. Smaller birds provide more immediate information about local conditions. The alarm calls of various species indicate approaching predators, while changes in normal bird activity patterns can signal environmental disturbances that aren't immediately obvious to human observers. The presence or absence of normal bird sounds helps assess whether conditions are normal or if some disturbance has altered the local environment. Insect populations vary dramatically with elevation and season, but they can have significant impacts on travel conditions and human comfort. Biting flies in certain valley sections can be intense enough to affect concentration and performance. More importantly, changes in insect activity levels often indicate approaching weather changes. Many species seek shelter before storms, creating an unusual absence of normal insect sounds that experienced travelers recognize as a weather warning sign. Reptile populations are limited at high altitudes, but venomous snakes are present in some lower elevation sections of major routes. Knowledge of species identification, habitat preferences, and appropriate response techniques is essential for safety in areas where snake encounters are possible. Most high-altitude snake species are not aggressive toward humans, but bites can still occur if snakes are accidentally stepped on or cornered. The last segment of your route presents unique challenges that test different aspects of your training and conditioning than the high-altitude technical sections you've already completed. As you descend toward Tampu Huelabamba, the destination station for today's run, you must maintain focus and performance despite fatigue accumulated over hours of sustained effort at extreme altitude. The terrain during the final approach is deceptively challenging, while the elevation is lower and the trail less technically demanding than the cliff-face descents you've navigated. The combination of accumulated fatigue and the psychological pressure of approaching your destination can lead to mistakes that compromise both safety and mission success. Many experienced Chasqui report that some of their closest calls with serious injury occurred during final approach sections when reduced alertness led to careless footwork or poor decision-making. Your pace during this section must balance the need to arrive within established time parameters with the importance of maintaining enough energy reserves for the message transfer procedures and potential emergency situations. The temptation to sprint the final miles, driven by the anticipation of completing a successful run, must be balanced against the risk of exhaustion that could prevent proper completion of your duties or compromise your recovery for the next assignment. The trail markers during the final approach serve different purposes than those in more remote sections of the route. These markers provide information not just about navigation, but also about the condition and status of the destination. Tampu. Specific stone arrangements indicate whether the receiving station is operating normally, understaffed, or experiencing problems that might affect the message transfer process. This advanced information allows you to prepare mentally and physically for the reception conditions you'll encounter. Visual contact with the destination Tampu typically occurs when you're still several miles away, providing psychological relief that must be carefully managed to avoid premature relaxation of the focused attention that mountain travel requires. The sight of the familiar stone structure, with smoke rising from its hearth and the receiving Chasqui visible at the designated observation point, confirms that your message will be successfully transferred and your mission completed. Communication protocols begin before you reach the Tampu itself. Mirror signals or conch shell calls announce your approach, confirm your identity as the expected messenger, and provide advance information about message priority and any unusual circumstances that might affect the transfer process. These preliminary communications allow the receiving station to prepare for your arrival, and ensure that the message transfer happens as quickly and efficiently as possible. The physical condition management during final approach requires conscious attention to hydration, energy levels, and injury assessment. This is your last opportunity to address any developing problems before they affect the critical message transfer procedures. Minor injuries that seemed manageable during the intense focus of technical terrain might require attention. Now that your immediate survival isn't demanding all your concentration, mental preparation for the message transfer involves reviewing the quipu content to ensure perfect accuracy, organizing the supporting information that must be communicated verbally, and preparing to provide the route condition report that helps the receiving station plan for their own runner's departure. This information transfer is as critical as the message itself, providing operational intelligence that helps maintain the efficiency and safety of the entire network. The message transfer ceremony at Tampu Wailabamba follows protocols developed over centuries to ensure perfect accuracy while minimizing the time required for the handoff between runners. These procedures represent the culmination of your individual mission and the critical link point where your effort connects to the broader imperial communication system. Your arrival is greeted by Amaru, the receiving Chasqui assigned to the next route segment, who has been preparing for departure since receiving advanced signals of your approach. His physical condition is optimal, rested, fed, and mentally prepared for his own challenging run, while yours reflects the accumulated stress of hours of sustained high-altitude effort. This contrast is deliberate and essential to the system's efficiency. The formal greeting ritual serves multiple purposes beyond simple courtesy. The exchange of traditional phrases provides verbal confirmation of identity and helps assess your physical and mental condition after the demanding run. Amaru's trained eye evaluates your fatigue level, checks for signs of altitude sickness or injury, and determines whether you're capable of completing the accurate message transfer required for mission success. The quipu examination process is conducted with meticulous attention to detail that would impress modern quality control specialists. Amaru examines each string, knot, and color pattern, while you guide him through the decoding process, explaining the content and context of each encoded element. This dual verification ensures that both messengers understand the content accurately, and that any damage or deterioration of the quipu during transport is identified and compensated for. The verbal message component covers information that can't be effectively encoded in quipu format. Route conditions, weather observations, urgent administrative details, and personal communications that require human interpretation rather than simple data transfer. This verbal component is repeated back to you by the receiving messenger to confirm accuracy before the transfer is considered complete. Route intelligence sharing provides critical information that helps ensure the safety and efficiency of subsequent runs. You provide detailed reports on current trail conditions, weather patterns, wildlife activity, and any obstacles or hazards encountered during your run. This information is as valuable as the message content itself, allowing the next runner to plan and prepare for conditions they'll encounter during their segment of the journey. The equipment inspection process ensures that the receiving messenger has everything needed for successful completion of his mission. This includes not just the primary message quipu, but also backup materials, emergency supplies, and any special equipment required for current conditions or seasonal variations. The systematic approach to equipment management reflects the high stakes involved and the understanding that equipment failure can compromise critical communications. Administrative procedures include updating logbooks that track message traffic, timing performance, and system efficiency metrics. These records serve multiple purposes. They provide operational data for system management, create accountability for individual performance, and maintain historical records that help identify patterns and trends affecting network operations. The formal transfer completion is marked by another ritual exchange that officially transfers responsibility for the message from you to the receiving runner. From this point forward, mission success depends on Amaru's performance rather than yours, allowing you to focus on recovery and preparation for your next assignment. The immediate post-run period requires as much attention and systematic approach as the preparation and execution phases of your mission. recovery at extreme altitude. Involves physiological processes that differ significantly from normal athletic recovery, demanding techniques specifically adapted for the unique stresses of sustained high-altitude performance. Your first priority is fluid replacement, but this must be managed carefully at altitude where dehydration and overhydration can both create serious problems. The coca tea prepared by the Tampu staff provides not just hydration, but also alkaloids that help manage altitude-related symptoms and support the metabolic processes needed for efficient recovery. The liquid is warm, helping restore core body temperature that may have dropped during periods of reduced activity or exposure to wind and weather. Nutritional replacement focuses on foods that provide easily digestible calories while supporting the specific physiological demands of high-altitude recovery. Quinoa soup with dried llama meat provides complete protein and complex carbohydrates, while avoiding foods that require significant digestive energy to process. Toasted corn kernels and dried fruit provide quick energy replacement, while coca leaves continue to support cardiovascular function during the recovery period. Physical recovery procedures address the specific muscle groups and systems that bore the greatest stress during the run. Gentle stretching helps prevent muscle cramping and maintains flexibility in legs that have been working intensively for hours. Massage techniques using plant-based oils help improve circulation and reduce inflammation in overworked muscles. Elevation of legs above heart level helps reduce swelling and improves venous return in systems that have been working against gravity during sustained uphill effort. The psychological recovery process is as important as physical recuperation, particularly after runs that involved challenging conditions or dangerous situations. The mental stress of sustained high-altitude performance, combined with the constant vigilance required for safe mountain travel, creates psychological fatigue that must be addressed systematically. Quiet meditation, familiar social interaction, and the satisfaction of successful mission completion all contribute to mental recovery. Route analysis and documentation provide important feedback that helps improve future performance while contributing to the collective knowledge base that supports the entire Chasqui system. You review each section of today's run, noting conditions encountered, techniques that worked well, problems that arose, and observations that might benefit other runners. This information is recorded in Tampu logbooks that serve as operational intelligence for the network. Performance assessment involves honest evaluation of your execution during various phases of the run. Areas where performance met or exceeded. Expectations provide confidence and validation of training approaches. Sections where performance could have been better become focus areas for future preparation and conditioning. The systematic approach to self-evaluation helps ensure continuous improvement in a profession where small performance margins can have large consequences. Equipment evaluation examines all gear used during the run for signs of wear, damage, or inadequate performance. Items that performed well are noted for future use, while equipment that proved problematic is flagged for replacement or modification. This systematic approach to equipment management helps ensure that gear failure doesn't compromise future missions. Social interaction with other Chasqui and Tampu staff provides opportunities for information sharing, emotional support, and maintenance of the professional relationships that make the network function effectively. These conversations often reveal useful intelligence about conditions on other routes, changes in administrative procedures, or operational issues that affect multiple parts of the system. Your individual run today represents just one link in a communication network that spans the entire Inca Empire, carrying thousands of messages simultaneously across terrain that encompasses every possible geographical and climatic extreme. Understanding your role within this broader system provides context for the importance of your work and the standards of performance that are required for network-wide success. The Capacnyan system includes over 25,000 miles of roads connecting every major city, administrative center, and strategic location within the empire. This network carries not just Chasqui messengers, but also military units, trade caravans, administrative officials, and pilgrims traveling to religious sites. The roads represent one of history's greatest engineering achievements, requiring construction techniques that modern engineers still study and admire. Message traffic through the system includes every type of information required to govern and Maintain an empire that spans multiple climate zones and encompasses millions of people. Military intelligence about border security, economic reports on agricultural production, administrative communications about taxation and resource allocation, legal documents related to judicial proceedings, and personal correspondence between officials and their families all flow through the same network that carried your message today. The relay system operates with timing precision that rivals modern logistics networks. Messages are prioritized based on content and urgency, with standard delivery time expectations that account for seasonal variations, weather patterns, and route difficulty. Emergency communications can traverse the entire empire in approximately 1 week, while routine administrative traffic follows. More relaxed schedules that allow for normal rest periods and safe travel practices. Quality control throughout the network involves regular inspections, performance monitoring, and systematic training programs that ensure consistent standards across thousands of individual runners and hundreds of relay stations. Senior administrators travel the network regularly, evaluating operations and implementing improvements based on changing conditions and accumulated experience. The economic impact of the communication system affects every aspect of imperial administration and commerce. Efficient information flow enables centralized decision-making for an empire that would be impossible to govern without rapid communication capabilities. Agricultural planning, military strategy, taxation policy, and resource allocation all depend on accurate, timely information that only the Chasqui network can provide. Backup systems and redundancy measures ensure that critical communications reach their destinations even when individual route segments become impassable or unreliable. Important messages are often sent via multiple routes simultaneously, while emergency protocols provide alternative approaches when primary systems fail. The robustness of these backup systems reflects the critical importance of maintaining communication capabilities even during natural disasters, military conflicts, or other disruptions. International comparison reveals that no other civilization of the era developed communication capabilities comparable to the Chasqui system. European postal systems were slower, less reliable, and covered much smaller geographical areas. Asian communication networks, while sophisticated in some respects, couldn't match the speed and reliability achieved by human runners in Andean terrain where horses couldn't operate effectively. Technological innovation within the system continues to improve efficiency and reliability through practical experience and systematic experimentation, route optimization, equipment development, training technique refinement, and operational procedure improvement all contribute to ongoing enhancement of system performance. The continuous improvement approach reflects the Empire's commitment to maintaining the most effective communication system possible. The challenges and demands of Chasqui service vary dramatically with seasonal changes that affect everything from weather patterns to trail conditions, requiring adaptation and flexibility that goes far beyond simple adjustment to temperature variations. Your training prepared you for these seasonal challenges, but experiencing them during actual operations provides education that can't be obtained in controlled training environments. Dry season operations, typically occurring from May through September, offer the most predictable and generally safest conditions for high-altitude mountain running. Trail surfaces are stable and provide good traction. Weather patterns are more predictable, and visibility is generally excellent, except during occasional storm systems. However, dry season also brings its own challenges. Dehydration risk increases due to low humidity, dust levels can affect respiratory function, and the increased number of travelers using the road system creates congestion and coordination challenges. During dry season, your daily water consumption requirements increase significantly, demanding more careful planning for hydration management, and potentially requiring additional water carries on longer route segments. The plant materials used for emergency food and medicine may be less available due to reduced moisture levels, requiring increased reliance on prepared supplies and more careful rationing of emergency resources. Wet season conditions, roughly from October through April, transform every aspect of Chasqui operations through increased precipitation, reduced visibility, unstable trail conditions, and dramatically increased avalanche and landslide risks. Many high-altitude route segments become impassable during peak wet season periods, requiring activation of alternative routes that may be longer, more difficult, or less secure than primary pathways. The psychological challenges of wet season operations are as significant as the physical ones. Constant exposure to cold, moisture, and reduced visibility creates stress that can affect decision-making, increase injury risk, and compromise the mental focus required for safe high-altitude travel. Techniques for maintaining morale and psychological stability become as important as physical conditioning for successful wet season performance. Wet season equipment requirements differ substantially from dry season needs. Waterproof protection becomes essential rather than optional, while traction devices for icy or slippery surfaces may be required for safe completion of certain route segments. The increased weight of wet season gear affects running performance and requires adjustments to pacing and energy management strategies. Snow season operations, primarily at the highest elevations and during the coldest months, represent the most technically demanding and dangerous conditions that Chasqui encounter. Routes that are merely challenging during normal conditions become genuinely life-threatening when covered with snow and ice, requiring specialized techniques and equipment that few people outside the Chasqui system ever master. Avalanche risk during snow season requires route selection knowledge that goes beyond normal trail navigation, incorporating understanding of slope stability, weather pattern impacts on snow conditions, and timing strategies that minimize exposure to avalanche-prone areas. This specialized knowledge takes years to develop and requires constant updating. Based on changing conditions and accumulated experience, cold weather physiology affects every aspect of high-altitude performance during snow season operations. Caloric requirements increase substantially due to the metabolic cost of maintaining body temperature, while dehydration risk paradoxically increases, despite cold conditions due to increased respiratory water loss and reduced sensation of thirst. Equipment management during extreme cold requires techniques for preventing gear failure due to ice accumulation, metal embrittlement, and other cold weather effects. Standard equipment that works perfectly during normal conditions may become unreliable or dangerous when subjected to extreme cold, requiring backup systems and alternative approaches that add complexity to already challenging operations. Yeti role as an experienced Chasqui includes responsibility for training the next generation of runners who will maintain the communication network as older runners retire or advance to supervisory positions. This training responsibility represents both honor and serious obligation, since the quality of instruction directly affects the safety and effectiveness of future operations. The selection process for new Chasqui candidates has evolved based on decades of experience identifying the physical, mental, and psychological characteristics that predict success in this demanding profession. Physical capabilities are important but not sufficient. Candidates must also demonstrate the mental toughness, decision-making ability, and emotional stability required for solo operations in extreme environments. Initial training focuses on fundamental high-altitude physiology and the conditioning techniques required to develop the cardiovascular and muscular systems needed for sustained performance. At extreme elevation, new candidates often struggle with the reality that their sea-level fitness means nothing at altitude, requiring complete reconditioning of their expectations and training approaches. Technical skill development includes navigation techniques, weather prediction, emergency procedures, and the specialized movement techniques required for safe high-speed travel on mountain terrain. These skills require extensive practice under controlled conditions before candidates are exposed to the real dangers of operational environments. Quipu literacy represents a completely separate educational track that requires intellectual capabilities different from those needed for physical performance. The ability to read, create, and accurately transmit information encoded in knotted chord systems demands attention to detail, memory skills, and logical thinking that not all physically capable candidates possess. Psychological conditioning may be the most difficult aspect of Chasqui training to teach effectively, since it involves developing mental responses to stress, fear, and isolation that can't be fully simulated in training environments. Techniques exist for building mental toughness, but ultimately, Each individual must find their own methods for maintaining psychological stability during solo operations in dangerous conditions. Mentorship relationships between experienced and novice Chasqui provide the most effective method for transmitting the practical knowledge that can't be taught through formal instruction. These relationships often develop into lifelong professional and personal bonds that help maintain morale and provide support systems for people whose work involves regular exposure to dangerous conditions. Assessment procedures for training candidates involve progressive exposure to operational conditions, starting with short, safe route segments and gradually increasing difficulty and responsibility as candidates demonstrate competence. The assessment process is designed to identify weaknesses before they become dangerous, while providing candidates with realistic expectations of operational demands. Graduation from training programs marks the beginning rather than the end of professional development. For new Chasqui, the first year of operational assignment involves close supervision and continued education as new runners gain experience with the realities of network operations. Many aspects of the work can only be learned through direct experience of actual operational conditions. The teaching process provides experienced Chasqui with opportunities to refine their own understanding of techniques and procedures through the process of explaining them to others. Training responsibilities often reveal areas where established procedures can be improved or where new approaches might be more effective than traditional methods. The Chasqui system represents far more than a practical communication network. It embodies cultural values, social organization principles, and spiritual beliefs that define Inca civilization. Your role as a messenger connects you to traditions that extend back centuries and forward into an uncertain future where external pressures threaten the continuity of Andean culture. The spiritual dimension of Chasqui service involves responsibilities to mountain spirits, ancestral traditions, and cosmic forces that govern the natural world. Each run takes you through sacred landscapes where every peak, valley, and water source has spiritual significance that affects how you conduct yourself and perform your duties. The messages you carry often include religious content that makes you a participant in spiritual communication networks, as well as administrative ones. Social status as a Chasqui involves privileges and responsibilities that reflect the importance of communication to imperial administration. Your specialized knowledge and proven reliability provide access to information and influence that few people outside the administrative hierarchy possess. This status brings respect from community members, but also expectations for behavior and performance that extend beyond purely professional requirements. Cultural preservation through the Chasqui system helps maintain connections between distant regions that might otherwise develop separate identities and lose their sense of shared heritage. The messages you carry include information about cultural practices, religious observances, and traditional knowledge that helps maintain cultural unity across an empire that encompasses tremendous geographical and ethnic diversity. Educational functions of the communication network involve transmission of technical knowledge, historical information, and administrative procedures that help maintain the sophistication and efficiency of imperial governance. Your quipu training makes you a participant in knowledge preservation systems that maintain cultural continuity across generations. Economic impact of efficient communication affects every level of society, from imperial administrators to individual farmers whose crop planning depends on information about weather patterns, market conditions, and administrative policies. Your successful completion of today's run contributes to economic stability and prosperity for thousands of people who never see the mountain trails but depend on the information flow you help maintain. Military significance of the Chasqui network provides early warning systems, intelligence gathering capabilities, and coordination support that enable effective defense of imperial territories. The military information you carry helps maintain security that protects civilian populations and preserves the stability that allows cultural and economic development to continue. Artistic and literary traditions within Chasqui culture include songs, stories, and visual arts that celebrate the achievements and sacrifices of runners throughout history. These cultural expressions help maintain morale and provide emotional support for people whose work involves regular exposure to danger and hardship. Historical awareness among Chasqui includes understanding of how the communication network developed, how it has adapted to changing conditions over time, and how current operations fit into broader patterns of imperial history. This historical perspective provides context for understanding the significance of your individual contributions to a system that has served the empire for generations. Future concerns about the sustainability and continuity of Chasqui traditions reflect growing awareness of external pressures that threaten traditional ways of life. Reports from distant regions describe changes that could affect the demand for traditional communication methods and the social structures that support the runner network. The Kapak Nyan serves multiple user groups whose presence on the roads creates opportunities for interaction, information exchange, and occasional complications that affect Chasqui operations. Learning to navigate these encounters safely and effectively represents an important aspect of professional competence that isn't always emphasized during basic training. Military units traveling the roads receive priority treatment that reflects their importance to imperial security and their authority to commandeer resources when necessary. Chasqui protocols require providing assistance to military commanders, sharing intelligence about route conditions, and giving way when military traffic has urgent priority. These interactions often provide valuable information about political and security conditions that affect route planning and safety considerations. Administrative officials and their retinues represent the civilian leadership whose messages you carry and whose authority ultimately governs Chasqui operations. Encounters with these officials provide opportunities to receive updated instructions, report operational problems, and demonstrate the professionalism and competence that maintain support for the communication network. However, these encounters also require careful attention to protocol and etiquette that can be challenging to maintain when you're exhausted from a difficult run. Trade caravans use the road system for commercial purposes that complement rather than compete with Chasqui functions. Merchants often carry information about market conditions, regional politics, and route conditions that can be valuable for operational planning. They also represent potential sources of emergency supplies or assistance when Chasqui encounter problems far from established support facilities. Religious pilgrims traveling to sacred sites throughout the empire provide cultural continuity and spiritual purpose that helps maintain morale and motivation for people whose work involves regular hardship and danger. Interactions with pilgrims remind Chasqui of the broader spiritual context of their service, while providing opportunities for cultural exchange and personal reflection. Engineering crews maintaining and improving the road system work under conditions similar to those faced by Chasqui, creating natural bonds between people who understand the challenges of high-altitude mountain work. These crews provide valuable intelligence about route conditions, upcoming construction projects, and seasonal factors that affect travel planning. They also represent potential sources of emergency assistance when Chasqui encounter problems in remote areas. Diplomatic missions carrying messages between different regions or foreign representatives visiting the empire create special security and protocol considerations for Chasqui operations. These high-level communications often require enhanced IT, security measures, modified routing, and coordination with administrative and military authorities that goes beyond normal operational procedures. Cultural exchange during road encounters provides opportunities for learning about conditions and practices in other regions of the empire. Information about local customs, technological innovations, agricultural techniques, and social developments helps maintain the broader cultural awareness that makes Chasqui effective representatives of imperial administration, emergency assistance situations, where Chasqui encounter travelers in distress create obligations that must be balanced against mission requirements and personal safety considerations. The protocols for providing aid while maintaining operational effectiveness require judgment and flexibility that can't be fully defined through standard procedures. Conflict resolution occasionally becomes necessary when competing interests or misunderstandings create tension between different user groups on the roads. Chasqui training includes techniques for de-escalating conflicts and finding solutions that allow everyone to continue their journeys safely and effectively. The Chasqui system represents a remarkable example of technological innovation, achieved through systematic experimentation, practical experience, and continuous improvement rather than dramatic breakthroughs. your equipment and techniques embody centuries of refinement that have produced solutions to problems that modern technology approaches through completely different methods. Footwear technology in the Usuta represents sophisticated understanding of biomechanics, materials science, and manufacturing techniques that produce athletic shoes remarkably well adapted to their specific use requirements. The sole construction combines multiple leather layers with different characteristics, hard outer layers for durability, softer inner layers for comfort, and specialized tread patterns that provide optimal traction on various surface types common in mountain terrain. The lacing and support systems in Chasqui footwear demonstrate advanced understanding of how to provide ankle stability and circulation support without restricting the natural movement patterns required for efficient running technique. The fiber cords used for lacing are manufactured from plant materials that maintain their strength and elasticity even when repeatedly wetted and dried. Subjected to extreme temperatures and stressed by sustained athletic activity, textile technology in Chasqui garments incorporates fiber selection, weaving techniques, and finishing processes that produce clothing systems remarkably well suited to the extreme demands of high-altitude mountain running. The layering approach allows for temperature regulation across a wide range of conditions while providing wind protection, moisture management, and durability that withstand the abrasion and stress of sustained athletic activity. The waterproof outer garments worn during wet season operations represent particularly sophisticated technology that achieves water resistance through mechanical rather than chemical means. The weaving patterns and fiber treatments create fabric that sheds water effectively while remaining breathable enough to prevent dangerous overheating during sustained physical activity. Navigation technology in the trail marking and waypoint systems demonstrates advanced understanding of human perception, environmental durability, and information encoding that produces navigation aids effective under a wide range of visibility and weather conditions. The stone cairns and marker systems are designed to be obvious to trained users, while remaining unobtrusive to casual observers, providing security benefits as well as navigation functionality. Communication technology in the signaling systems used between tampus incorporates understanding of acoustics, optics, and atmospheric conditions that allows information transmission across distances that would challenge modern communication methods. The conch shell signals are designed to carry effectively across valleys and around obstacles, while the mirror signaling systems take advantage of high-altitude visibility conditions to achieve reliable communication over remarkable distances. Nutrition technology in the emergency rations and performance foods consumed by Chasqui demonstrates sophisticated understanding of human physiology, food preservation, and the specific nutritional requirements of sustained high-altitude athletic performance. The dried foods maintain their nutritional value and palatability for extended periods, while providing optimal combinations of calories, protein, and micronutrients. Medical technology in the plant-based medicines and injury treatment techniques available to Chasqui reflects centuries of experimentation and practical experience with the specific health challenges faced during high-altitude operations. The coca-based preparations for altitude management demonstrate particularly sophisticated understanding of pharmacology and dosage control. Quality control systems throughout the Chasqui network ensure that technological innovations are implemented consistently and effectively across thousands of individual users and hundreds of operational locations. The standardization of equipment, procedures, and training methods reflects organizational capabilities that rival modern industrial systems. The social relationships that develop within the Chasqui community provide emotional support, professional cooperation, and cultural continuity that make it possible to sustain a career involving regular exposure to danger and hardship. These relationships often become as important as family bonds, creating a network of mutual support that extends throughout the communication system. Professional partnerships between Chasqui assigned to adjacent route segments develop through regular interaction during message transfers. Shared experiences with challenging conditions and mutual dependence for operational success. These partnerships often evolve into deep friendships based on shared understanding of the unique demands and rewards of Chasqui service. Your relationship with Amaru, the runner who receives your messages at Tampu Wailabamba, exemplifies the kind of professional bond that develops between Chasqui, who work regularly together. His reliability and competence provide confidence that your messages will be properly handled and forwarded, while your consistent performance gives him confidence in the information and intelligence you provide about route conditions and operational factors affecting his runs. Mentorship relationships with experienced Chasqui, who guided your initial training, continue to provide guidance, support, and professional development opportunities throughout your career. These relationships often involve obligations and responsibilities that extend beyond purely professional interactions, creating bonds similar to family relationships in their depth and permanence. Training relationships with newer Chasqui whom you help develop provide opportunities for leadership, knowledge transfer, and the personal satisfaction that comes from contributing to the continuity and improvement of the system. These relationships help maintain your own skills and knowledge while providing motivation and purpose that extends beyond individual achievement. Social connections within Tampu communities where you're stationed create local support networks that provide practical assistance, cultural interaction, and emotional grounding that help maintain psychological health during a career that involves extended periods of isolation and physical stress. These community relationships often develop into permanent bonds that continue after retirement from active Chasqui service. Family relationships, while challenging to maintain given the demands and risks of Chasqui service, provide personal motivation and emotional anchoring that help sustain commitment during difficult periods. The financial support and social status that come with Chasqui service often enable family members to achieve opportunities that wouldn't otherwise be available, creating additional motivation for professional excellence. Romantic relationships face particular challenges due to the travel requirements, physical demands, and risks associated with Chasqui service. However, relationships that survive these challenges often develop extraordinary strength and depth based on mutual respect for the sacrifices and commitments required by the profession. Friendships with people outside the Chasqui system provide perspective and emotional balance that help maintain psychological health and cultural connections beyond the somewhat insular world of professional running. These relationships require effort to maintain, but provide important reminders of life experiences and values that extend beyond professional achievement. Professional rivalries and competitions within the Chasqui community, while potentially problematic if taken to extremes, generally provide positive motivation for performance improvement and professional development. The culture of excellence within the system creates environments where friendly competition helps everyone perform at higher levels. After 15 years of Chasqui service, the physical demands of sustained high-altitude mountain running are beginning to affect your performance in ways that require honest assessment of your capabilities and planning for the transition to different roles within the imperial system. The decision about when to retire from active running represents one of the most difficult challenges that experienced Chasqui face. Physical changes that accompany aging and accumulated wear from years of extreme athletics affect different aspects of performance in ways that aren't always immediately obvious. Cardiovascular efficiency at altitude, while still excellent compared to untrained individuals, has declined from the peak levels you achieved during your mid-20s. Recovery time after difficult runs has increased, affecting your ability to maintain the consistent performance required for reliable network operations. Injury patterns have shifted from acute problems caused by accidents or overexertion to chronic issues related to repetitive stress and accumulated wear on joints, muscles, and connective tissues. The knee problems that many older Chasqui develop are beginning to affect your running technique and speed on technical descents, while minor foot injuries that once healed quickly now require longer recovery periods. Mental and emotional changes that accompany extended exposure to the stresses of Chasqui service include both positive developments in wisdom and judgment, and negative effects from accumulated stress and risk exposure. Your ability to assess route conditions, predict weather patterns, and make sound decisions under pressure has never been better, but you've also noticed increased anxiety about risks that didn't used to concern you, and decreased tolerance for the discomfort and hardship that are inevitable aspects of the work. Alternative career paths within the imperial system provide opportunities for continued service that utilize the knowledge and experience accumulated during active Chasqui service. Training new runners, supervising network operations, planning route improvements, and serving in administrative positions all represent meaningful ways to continue contributing to the communication system while reducing exposure to the physical risks of active running. The transition planning process involves careful assessment of financial resources, family obligations, and personal preferences for post-running activities. Chasqui service provides financial benefits that allow for comfortable retirement, but the transition from active service to civilian life represents a major lifestyle change that requires thoughtful preparation. Knowledge transfer responsibilities become increasingly important as experienced Chasqui approach retirement. The practical wisdom accumulated through years of operational experience represents a valuable resource for the system that must be preserved and transmitted to newer runners. This knowledge transfer often takes place through formal training assignments and informal mentorship relationships. Legacy considerations include evaluation of your contributions to the communication system and the impact your service has had on imperial administration and the communities you've served. The messages you've carried, the trainees you've developed, and the operational improvements you've contributed all represent lasting legacies that extend beyond individual achievement. Health management during the retirement transition requires attention to the long-term effects of years of high-altitude athletics and exposure to extreme conditions. Former Chasqui often experience health issues related to their service, but they also often enjoy better overall health and longevity than people who haven't maintained the fitness levels required for mountain running. Social adjustment to retirement involves finding new sources of purpose, community, and identity after a career that provided clear roles and responsibilities within a highly structured professional system. Many former Chasqui struggle with this transition, while others find new satisfaction in family life, community service, or business activities. As evening settles over Tampu Wailabamba and you prepare for rest after successfully completing another mission in your long career as a Chasqui, the time for reflection arrives naturally. The physical exhaustion that follows a challenging run creates a meditative state where the day's experiences can be processed and integrated into the larger understanding of what this extraordinary profession means to you personally and to the empire you serve. The individual run completed today represents both a routine operational success and a unique combination of conditions, challenges, and experiences that will never be exactly replicated. Each run carries its own lessons, its own satisfactions, and its own additions to the accumulated wisdom that guides professional judgment and personal understanding. Today's successful message delivery ensures that administrative information reaches its intended destination, contributing to the efficient governance that maintains stability and prosperity throughout the empire. The broader significance of Chasqui service extends far beyond individual achievement or even systemic efficiency to encompass cultural values, social organization, and spiritual beliefs that define what it means to be part of Inca civilization. Your legs have carried not just encoded information, but also the cultural continuity that binds together diverse populations across impossible terrain, maintaining connections that make the empire more than just a collection of conquered territories. Personal growth through years of Chasqui service has developed capabilities and insights that extend far beyond athletic performance or technical competence. The mental toughness required for sustained high-altitude solo travel, the judgment needed for making life or death decisions under stress, and the cultural awareness that comes from carrying messages between distant communities all represent forms of human development that few people have opportunities to achieve. The relationships formed through Chasqui service, with fellow runners, with communities along the routes, with the landscape itself, have created bonds that provide meaning and satisfaction that transcend material rewards or social recognition. The sense of belonging to something larger than individual concerns, of contributing to purposes that benefit countless people you'll never meet, provides fulfillment that makes the hardships and risks of the profession worthwhile. Future uncertainties about the continuity of traditional ways of life, the stability of the empire, and the role of human communication networks in a changing world create concerns that extend beyond personal career planning to encompass broader questions about cultural preservation and adaptation. The reports filtering in from distant regions, suggest that changes are coming that may fundamentally alter the world you've known and served. Professional pride in the technical competence, ethical standards, and service dedication that characterize the Chasqui system provide satisfaction that goes beyond individual accomplishment to encompass identification with institutional excellence and cultural achievement, being part of the most efficient communication network in the world, serving the most sophisticated administrative system ever developed, contributes to a sense of purpose and accomplishment that validates the sacrifices required by the profession. Legacy considerations about the impact your service has had and will continue to have through the messages delivered, the runners trained, and the operational improvements contributed provide perspective on the lasting significance of individual effort within larger systems. The knowledge that your successful runs have contributed to military security, administrative efficiency, economic stability, and cultural continuity helps justify the personal costs of a demanding career. Spiritual dimensions of Chasqui service connect individual effort to cosmic purposes and ancestral traditions that provide meaning beyond practical achievement. Running the sacred paths through landscapes blessed by mountain spirits, carrying information that serves the descendants of Inti the sun god, participating in traditions that honor the wisdom of generations past, all contribute to spiritual fulfillment that makes physical hardship and personal sacrifice meaningful parts of a larger cosmic order. As sleep approaches and the sounds of the mountain night replace the activities of the day, the satisfaction of mission accomplished blends with anticipation of tomorrow's challenges and opportunities. The life of a Chasqui demands everything you can give, but it also provides experiences and achievements that few humans ever have the privilege to know. The last thought before sleep is gratitude for the strength to complete today's run, for the safety that allowed successful message delivery, for the opportunity to serve something greater than individual concerns, and for the privilege of living a life that pushes human capabilities to their limits while contributing to the welfare of an entire civilization. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, new routes, new messages to carry across impossible terrain. But tonight, rest comes with the deep satisfaction of duties faithfully performed, of trust deservedly earned, and of service that honors both the individual calling and the cultural traditions that make such service possible. In the thin air and profound silence of the high Andes, surrounded by peaks that have witnessed the passage of countless Chasqui runners across the centuries, you drift into sleep knowing that you are part of something eternal, something that connects the earthly realm to the cosmic order, something that will continue long after your own running days have ended. The mountains keep their vigil. The stars trace their ancient paths across the sky, and the great network of stone roads continues to bind together an empire built on the simple truth that information, accurately and swiftly delivered, is the foundation upon which all human civilization ultimately rests. Your legs have been the internet of the ancient world, and tomorrow they will carry that sacred responsibility once again.